Welcome to today's 3-minute halacha. Sometimes, after we've washed and are prepared to make a motzi, we realize that the salt that we want is not on the table. Are we allowed to ask for the salt? Should we just be motioning? Or is some other option possible? The Shulchan Aruch in Siman Kuf Samech Zayin 167, paragraph Vav, notes that a person is not allowed to talk between making a bracha for food and eating the food. And in fact, if you do speak, the Shulchan Aruch notes, Tzarich lachazor levarech, you have to once again make the bracha all over again. Unless, notes the Shulchan Aruch, if what you were talking about was a necessity for what you had made the bracha about. Kegon shebirech alapat, v'kodem she'achal amar heviu melach. For example, if you made a bracha on the bread, but before you ate the bread, you asked to bring some salt to the table. This would seem to answer the question that if you forgot the salt, you can ask for it. But the Ramah notes, Mikol makom lechatchila lo yafsik klal. However, ideally, you should make no break whatsoever, and rather, whenever you make a bracha, you should immediately eat afterwards. Notice that the Shulchan Aruch, however, in its comments, doesn't say that you just have to say salt or indicate or something else, but rather it gives the example of a person saying to please bring the salt. So you could say to the person, can you please bring the salt? You can say it in a normal fashion. You don't have to make just a general reference of salt. Nevertheless, the custom has arisen that you try to minimize what you say in these kinds of scenarios. However, Rabbi Gedalia Dov Schwartz Zatzal noted that sometimes when people are making sounds and all sorts of hand signals, it might be a greater hefsek, a greater break between the bracha and actually eating than if you just said, bring the salt. And so we have to be careful and we have to try to minimize any kind of break. But there's one more thing to note, and that is in the previous chapter in Shulchan Aruch, it talks about the idea of not speaking between washing hands and making a motzi. However, not talking there is less of an issue than between making a motzi and actually eating the bread. It's a custom not to talk in between, as opposed to when you're going to eat the bread, you made a bracha and you need to eat the bread right away. And so in that scenario, if you washed, you sat down to make a motzi, and you realized the salt wasn't on the table yet, it's even easier to say that a person should be allowed to make a regular comment in regular fashion. Please bring the salt, instead of hand motions or even some other kind of hinting. Then make the motzi, having the salt at the table all ready to eat. So it is a hefsek, it is, but it's a hefsek, an interruption that be permitted.